Thank you. You can hear me okay, yeah? Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making it out of those soft beds of this hotel at this ungodly hour. My name is Dave Collins. I don't need to say much about myself. We've been going for about 15 years, our company. We're based in the UK. You can probably tell from the accent I'm not exactly local. We are only 4 people in our company, 2 based in the UK, in New Forest, and 2 people in Chicago here in the US. And actually that's all you need to know about my business. Just a very quick show of hands, how many people are using Google AdWords right now? Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. How many people are actually happy with the results that they get? Okay, that's good. That makes me feel that little bit better. My background, I've been working with AdWords since the year 2000, which is quite a long ago, so quite a while ago. If you take 12 years off your current age, figure out how old you were back then. I was 30 years old. I had no children. I had more hair, honestly. I slept a fair amount more. During the year that I was really getting my feet wet in AdWords, this was a year that the films Perfect Storm, Meet the Parents were big in the box office. If you listen to chart music, you were listening to stuff like Lenny Kravitz, Bon Jovi, and a very young and innocent-looking Britney Spears. So it was a while ago. I started work with the AdWords system round about 5-6 months before it was actually launched to the public. Now in our company, we actually track the work that we do a little bit obsessively, more or less by the minute. Well, very much by the minute. And just while I was preparing this presentation back in the UK, I pulled out some figures that I thought were interesting and relevant. It turns out I work an average of 4 hours a day in the AdWords system. So if we do some basic maths, let's assume a year is 48 working weeks, if only that were the case, right? A week being 5 working days, same thing applies. So AdWords a day, 4 hours. So it turns out a year I'm doing 240 days times 4, 960 hours a year, living the AdWords system. On top of that, we run some AdWords training schemes locally, various presentations, webinar posts, presentations like this, and so on. So we're looking quite comfortably 1,000 hours a year that I am working in the AdWords system. This hasn't been for the whole 12 years. This has only been for the last 11 years. So we look at 11,000 hours of AdWords experience, which is depressing. I assume most people are familiar with this idea that 10,000 hours and you're an expert in more or less anything. I can't comment on the accuracy, the validity of that, but I do know I do an awful lot of AdWords. Like everything, unfortunately, there's a price to be paid. When I started work with AdWords, I looked like that, genuinely. Today, I look like that. Although in fairness, these two didn't really help the aging process either. And I got to throw a picture of the kids into the presentation. Where am I going with this? Over the next 40 minutes, one of my main goals is to take the 11,000 hours of pain and suffering, to take it and inject it into the next 40 minutes. We're looking at 275 hours of AdWords experience per minute that I talk from this point on, obviously. So why AdWords? There's a lot of reasons. Google give you all sorts of reasons why you should be using the AdWords system. But the main thing is it allows businesses to reach the world and expand into whole new areas that maybe you're not already targeting. It's low risk. The returns can be fantastic, and it's relatively easy, at least to set up. Take away all the hype, and AdWords actually only does one thing really, really well, and that's that it brings people who want to buy what you sell at the exact moment they want to buy it. So it's very much, it's the opposite, if you like, of interruption advertising. The problem with AdWords is that most people get it wrong. Most people lose money on AdWords, and they don't need to. The bigger problem is that many of the most people get it really, really wrong and have no idea. I'm sure I could have phrased that a little bit better, but you get the idea. I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, if I get it right, that most people in here will possibly look at the relationship that you have with Google a little bit differently. And by doing so, you'll be able to make it a healthier and a more profitable one for you at least. So Contrary to popular belief, Google are not evil, they're not even bad, but Google do place the well-being of their business above the well-being of yours, which isn't unreasonable. Now, within the AdWords ecosystem, you've got three mutually dependent parties, if you like. You've got the advertisers, people like you and I. You've got the users, also people like you and I, the people who go there to search Google, and you have Google. Now, that whole framework, that ecosystem only has one threat. It's not Apple, it's not Facebook, it's not Yahoo or Microsoft or the Alliance. And it's not whichever next big one that comes out that everyone's going to say, this is the latest Google killer. The threat that they face is that you and I will stop clicking on the ads. In other words, you go to Google, you do a search for something, you click on the first ad, the second ad, the third ad, you're kind of getting stuff that's relevant, but it's not exactly what you're looking for. We're fine with that, right? That's the way it goes. But if you start clicking 9, 10, 11, 12 ads and you're still not finding what you're looking for, how long will it actually take before you start ignoring the ads completely or possibly even looking elsewhere? And you can't underestimate the scale of the scale of that threat to Google. Over the past 4 years, year on year, 96% of Google's revenue comes from their advertising. So to all intents and purposes, Google is AdWords and AdWords is Google. Their whole infrastructure is based on ads. All their products, their services, their applications, their programs, they all either push out the ads or they feed in the information to feed this system, very much the beating heart of the ads system. Because of this, Google, understandably, they're quite scared. They're worried that eventually we might start ignoring the ads, phase them out, not notice them, start clicking on them. Which is why, over time, Google's actually started to quite significantly blur the differences between the AdWords ads and the organic results. The ads physically moved closer, and the organic results are starting to resemble more the format and the structure of the actual ads. So, if you take a step back, Google need their advertisers need the users, and users need Google. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? The mistake that people make is assuming that this relationship is a symbiotic one, and it's far from it. Really simple example to illustrate the point. Let's say you have a company selling a product. So they've got an ad, bidding on a certain keyword that's relevant. They've got an ad. It's a good ad. It's a good ad because people click on the ad, they like what they see, and they're happy. Job done. They're competing with a bad ad. The bad ad still looks good. People still click on the ad. But what happens is people click on the ad, they don't find what they're looking for, they go back to Google. So let's assume in this scenario that both of them, for the sake of convenience, are both bidding $1 per click. What then happens, most people will then click the first ad, because that's the one at the top, find what they're looking for, job done. Google have made $1 in revenue. But things get a little bit more interesting if Google swap the order and they put the bad ad in the first place and the good ad in second place. Again, they're still bidding $1 per click. But what most people will do will click on the first ad first, being the top ad. They read the content, it's not what they're looking for, they go back to Google. Then they click the second ad, the good ad, find what they're looking for, and so they're happy. It's a really simple point, but it illustrates that this relationship between advertisers and Google is so far from symbiotic. And the irony, the icing on the cake, if you like, the company that's running the AdWords, the bad ad, chances are every time they do a search for their keyword, because we all search for our keywords, right? Every time they do and they see their ad above their competition, they're going to be delighted. So welcome to the nature of the relationship between Google and their advertisers. So pre-AdWords, the old way of getting customers, very broadly speaking, 3 ways. One is faith in the product. The belief that what you have is so good, the world is eventually going to beat a path to your door. Second is faith in figures. I've come across this approach too many times where someone says, as an example, we have the greatest ad you've ever seen for Microsoft Excel. It is unbelievable, it's phenomenal. And if we can only hit 1% of the world's 500 million Excel users, you can see where they're going with that. And the third is faith in organic traffic through SEO or just naturally by the whole system kicking in and working. Faith in the product it's a nice idea in theory, but we all know, right? We all know that just having a great product isn't enough. one way or the other. You've got to either push it out there, you've got to push out what you do, what you sell, or pull in the people who are interested. Faith in figures speaks for itself, and for obvious reasons, those people tend to move on and do different things. Faith in organic traffic, we do a lot of SEO work, and it works, it really works, but it's horrible. It's a really horrible process. You've got a brand new website today with no history. Getting out there and ranking for competitive keywords that drive volumes is next to impossible. So the problem that many people have is that they hit this wall. And I suspect that some people in the room can relate to that moment when you sit there and say, we just need more people. We know it's great. The few people who use what we sell love it, but we need more people. Can anyone here relate to that? So the ability, in my opinion, the ability to get past that wall differentiates the successful business from the dream of what could have been. And that's why 11 years on, 11 years, 11,000 hours of fighting with AdWords, that's why I actually genuinely love Google AdWords. It's not the system itself. It's not the promotional gifts they sent. Thank you for the umbrella and the lip balm that they sent me 2 months ago. Generosity is phenomenal. It's not the joy of living the AdWords 11,000 hour dream. It's a fact that AdWords is a hugely powerful means to an end. And that end is pulling in people to your website who really want what you sell. So this point, going to move straight into the hardcore ideas, if you like. Going to lay out 10 different ideas, some of which may be new, some which may not, but 10 different ideas for you to grab away control from Google and control the system. The whole idea of segmentation, at the heart of AdWords is actually take away all the complexity, all the technical stuff. It's actually a very simple system. There's a need, people put in their keyword, people see your ad, people click on your ad, and they land on your landing page. That's it. That's actually all there is to it. And as much as I hate the analogy, links and chains, the stronger the links between these different parts, the better AdWords works. So, simple example, you're home on Wednesday, Thursday after this conference. You wake up with shock to find there's water on your face. You open your eyes and you see there's a leak, there's water dripping through the ceiling. You jump out of your bed, you go to your computer, which thankfully is dry, and you do search for emergency plumber. A whole load of different ads. One of them addresses emergency service. You click on the ad, they explain how they'll talk you through turning off your water supply, have someone out there in 60 minutes and so on. That's how it works. That's how AdWords works when you do it correctly. We've worked with this company, an American company, Iolo Technologies. They've got the System Mechanic Pro Professional. It does all sorts of things. It fixes your computer, it speeds it up, it optimizes your internet connection, a whole load of things. The point, the really relevant point, and it's a really simple mistake, is that when someone goes to Google and they do a search for speed up my PC, they're not looking for a registry cleaner, even though a registry cleaner, at least in theory, may speed up for your PC. When they do a search for stop PC crashing, they're not looking for fix my PC, even though you, the advertiser, it's the same thing, but it's not exactly what they're looking for. Real life example, I did a search here in the US, different part of the States. I did a search for emergency dentist. I wanted to see what would happen. This was the first ad that I saw, the top ranking ad, which isn't the worst looking website. It's slightly odd, but that's okay. The problem with it is, it doesn't say anything about emergency treatment. It doesn't even mention it. And I'm sitting there holding my mouth in pain. I want an emergency dental service. So I go back to Google and I click on the second ad. This is where I get taken, a website that's questionable in terms of design and sanity. But the only takeaway point here is they talk about affordable, anxiety-free sedation. And I never actually considered that the sedation aspect is something to fear. So thank you very much, Webster Dental Care. But again, they don't talk about emergency dental care. The third ad that I click on, yet again, no mention whatsoever of emergency dental treatment. And this one really scares me, because in this one, not only is the dentist unreasonably happy, but she's not even noticed that her patient is apparently dead. It isn't till the fourth ad that finally I find what I'm looking for, a dentist that offers emergency treatment. Got it capital letters, red, On the top left, it's in the side nav. The headline is emergency dentist. The first 2 paragraphs are all about emergency dental treatment. Now, we worked with a dental surgery in the UK, and I know how competitive and how costly these terms are. You pay a lot of money for these clicks, but the real irony is chances are at least some of those first 3 services did actually offer emergency dental treatment, but they didn't put it up there. It wasn't there on the actual landing page. Now, when I'm sitting there at home, I am not going to take the effort to trawl through their website to see if they actually offer what I'm looking for, because it's a lot easier for me to click back and click on the next ad. Even a basic landing page, a very tiny tweaked, modified version of your main product page or your main home page, can have enormously beneficial effects. So this process of segmentation is that you take your keywords, you don't have an ad group or campaign with hundreds of keywords, you cluster them small, really focused groups of keywords. Then you have ads that mold around those keywords. The ads directly address these specific keywords. They're not generic. They're as specific as they can be. And when someone clicks on the ads, then they're taken to a landing page that carries on the work. It carries on that process of the keyword ad landing page. It's slow. It's a slow process. It's tedious, especially with a large account if you're not already employing it. But it is incredibly, incredibly profitable. So, tip number 2, balancing the odds with data. Data is a weird thing in our industry. When we started, it was before analytics was popular. I'm not too sure it existed. And we'd ask for access to our clients' server log files, if you remember, having to work with those. And a lot of them had no idea, well, where are the server log files, what are they? They didn't have that whole mentality that they're sitting on this amazing information. Then it was the data revolution, if you like, and everyone's sitting there saying, hey, data is cool, and these same people that a few years before didn't know what log files are suddenly describing themselves as data warriors, data junkies. Now, things have gone full circle, and now we're at the point where people are starting to say, actually, data isn't cool, which to me is a little bizarre. From an AdWords point of view, my experience is listen to the data in your AdWords account. It is phenomenally important. It's a vital part of the process. And part of the skill set is actually knowing not only to what to pay attention to and what to ignore, but how to really, really understand what you're looking at. A really common example is average position. For some reason, this is the thing that people fixate on. And it can be very misleading. So in this example up here, you can see that the first 3 ads displayed above the organic results, and the 4th ad is in the top right. Our experience has been that more often than not, ad number 4 will outperform ads 3, 2, and sometimes even 1, because effectively, it's in the spot of the first position. And there are various ways to get this data from webmaster tools from your AdWords account, but ultimately, your average position is nothing more than a gauge on your dashboard. It's useful, but it's not something to obsess on. Ultimately, you need to make sure that you're looking at the right data, ignoring the irrelevant data, and most importantly, understanding exactly what you're looking at. Tip number 3, drop the narcissism. This is a classic mistake in SEO and Google AdWords, and it's a belief that everything that happens is because of you. It's because of your actions. Your average position raised or fell because of possibly you adjusted the bid last week. Your cost per conversion has dropped or increased because of what you did to the landing page. The actions of your competition will sometimes play a greater part in what happens in your account than your own actions. And that's a really scary fact, but that's what we see time and time again. So whether your competition are targeting new campaigns, altering bids, different ads, different landing pages, keywords, there's an infinite number of things that they can do, all of which can have the most enormous impact on your actual account. The point is your ads are not displayed in isolation. They don't exist in a bubble. They're displayed with your competing ads. And sometimes shit just happens. Sometimes a keyword, an ad group, or even a whole campaign that you know full well should work phenomenally well. Sometimes it just doesn't. Now, we were in a very bizarre position. We worked for a US e-commerce company that had competing platforms, all of which separate businesses, and we actually handled at one point 4 different accounts And all four had this overlap of terms that they were directly competing with. So we were in this amazing position of handling 4 competing accounts and seeing what happens if we do something in one account, what effect will it have on the other 3, which was mind-blowing. What we took away from that is sometimes we could really clearly see why something happened. Sometimes we'd say, hey, we just induced that new campaign, this new targeting, this new theme idea, and it worked fantastically well. So of course, performance is going to suffer in the others. Sometimes we thought we knew what we were looking at and we thought we understood, and time proved that actually we were completely wrong. And sometimes even Google were actually quite clueless as to why certain things were happening. Sometimes we were only competing on terms with the other 3 accounts that we were handling, and Google didn't understand why they were seeing things. But sometimes shit just happens. And sometimes the things that happen in your AdWords account aren't just about you. Okay, number 4, processes and cycles. Effective AdWords management involves this whole process of identifying the strengths and building on them, seeking out new opportunities, and identifying and ultimately killing the weaknesses in your AdWords account. So you're looking for opportunities, you're looking for the strengths, you're looking for the weaknesses, all of which happen on a 7-day cycle. So this first graph is clicks in an AdWords account. Second graph is visits from an analytics account. Now these are 2 different accounts and they're actually on 2 different time periods, but all websites and all AdWords accounts show this 7-day trend. So a really common thing is someone decides to get a little bit more advanced with AdWords. They decide, let's have a look, see what's happening. And what do you discover? Your main campaign, the ROI drops at the weekend, horribly, dramatically. The knee-jerk response is say, right, we turn it off. We'll only display it Monday to Friday. But that's the wrong approach. You don't need to do that with AdWords. A far better approach is duplicate the campaign, have the original work from Monday to Friday, and the new campaign only work on Saturday to Sunday, and drop your bids. 50%, 80%, whatever it takes to make it work, but you will make it work. But this leads to one of the main problems with AdWords, that AdWords takes time. It's time intensive. And at the absolute minimum, you need to be able to commit a minimum of a few hours a week, every week, to manage your AdWords account. The reason being, everything changes. Don't make this classic mistake of saying, we've been working our rears off on this account, it really works, it's great. You know what, I'm going to leave it for the next 6 months, it's fine. It doesn't work like that. Everything changes. It keeps changing. The searches, your competition, Google themselves, the reach of the display network, everything changes. Now, I see a massive, massive number of neglected AdWords accounts, as you can probably imagine. And all too often, when I speak to the person handling it, it's a really common scenario. They're not the AdWords person, they're the marketing person, and a tiny little bit of that is AdWords, and AdWords always gets pushed to the bottom of the list. An actual quote when I had this conversation recently with someone was, Dave, you know what, you're right. I completely take your point, but you know what, we're only spending $150, $200 a week. That's it, so what do we have to lose? The answer to that is $10,000 a year. And the answer to them was, and you've been doing this for 3 years, doesn't time fly? $30,000 and you've thrown it all away. That got their attention a little bit more. The point is that AdWords isn't a charity. The idea of AdWords isn't to give your money and support Google. The idea is it makes you money. It's supposed to actually make you money and attract people to your website who want to buy what you sell. And if you get it right, and you should get it right, it should never be questionable whether it's even profitable. It should be very, very profitable, and it should be fairly clear. But it does unfortunately involve time and work. Tip number 5, get ready for confrontation. I'm hypnotized by that image as well. Our company have a lot of competition, you can probably imagine. Even within the software industry, there's a whole load of different people who offer some of the services that we provide. I know most of them fairly well, and I actually consider some of them genuinely to be my friends. If someone approaches me, as happens quite often, saying, hey, this guy here gave us this price quote for a month to handle the AdWords account, can you beat it? The answer is no. I won't do that. It's a fair quote, choose between us. The reason I'm explaining this is I get the whole friendly competition thing, I really, really do. But if you're advertising on AdWords and your competition are advertising on AdWords, all of that goes out of the window. The reason being that AdWords is probably the most direct and confrontational form of advertising that you're ever going to undertake. I mean, think about it, you're targeting the same people the same keywords, your ads are going to be displayed right next to theirs. Their gain is going to be your loss, and vice versa. So really common mistake that I see, possibly the most common mistake in AdWords, is people spend too much money on the bids. Think about it, your competition are spending 3 or 4 times your bid. Who's going to be in that whole situation we looked at before, displaying the ads in order? It's obviously going to be pretty tempting for Google to place their ad that will get 3 or 4 times a click, the cost per click, in the first position. Maybe you're thinking 3 or 4 times, that's not going to happen. It happens, believe me. Maybe you're thinking this is going to be short-lived. They're going to realize quite soon this is uneconomical. They're burning through money. Well, think again. This year, actually, I'll say this year, since the start of January, I have seen 4 AdWords accounts that were losing so much money on an ongoing basis that I recommended these companies, I hope none of them are in here right now, I recommended they pause the accounts immediately. Whether or not they were going to use our services, stop. Now, all accounts lose money, all of them. But these 4 were hemorrhaging dollars like you wouldn't believe. The owners, or rather the people handling the accounts, they weren't idiots. Far from it. Actually, one of them was, but the other three weren't idiots. But the whole system embraces waste. The system is designed to make Google money. And again, they put their interests before yours. And the effect that this whole system can have on your competition, even when they're inadvertent competition, can be awful. So your performance ultimately has to be better. It has to be better than the performance of your competition. And that's the only way to make it work. Do not get me wrong, I'm not in any way advocating dirty or underhand tricks, I'm really not. But I am advocating really opening your eyes and understanding how the system actually works. So, tip number 6, be a stalker. Everyone gets this basic idea, you buy something, the company stays in touch with you. And it generally works. We buy something, assuming the offers they send you are actually targeted and they're relevant and potentially interesting, we're happy to receive them as long as we don't get too many. Remarketing, AdWords remarketing, allows you to target the people who visited your website but didn't actually convert. In other words, you can stalk anyone interested in what you sell for 540 days, which is great. Obviously, Google don't quite explain it that way. Now, we've been using remarketing for quite a while for most of our clients, I think now, and it works quite well. Actually, it works really, really well. We also ran an experiment with our own company. That's something we can never possibly do with our clients. And what we did is we opened the floodgates. We went all out bombarding people. So what we did, anyone who came to one of our websites, one of the main pages, one of our main services, anyone who came to their pages, we've got them. They're in our net. And from that moment on, we bombarded them. We hounded them mercilessly wherever they went. The results of this, the first thing that happened was I had a voicemail left from a friend in London who thought I'd actually done something to her PC. And she left me a voicemail begging me to make it stop, you bastard. The next thing that happened was I had an email from a guy from a software company in a place called Italy, Peldi, basically explaining that he was seeing our ads everywhere. Everywhere he went, he saw our ads. And he wasn't sitting there going, wow, this is cool. He was sitting there going, this is actually creepy. Negative. So we wrote a blog post about it, and in total we got 25 comments, either comments in the blog post or email. I know 25 is a suspicious figure, but generally 25 people contact me. Of the 25, 3 said that they didn't really like it. They spoke out against it. Over a third said they didn't really like it that much, but they conceded that it worked. And just under a third were bizarrely impressed and happy, which I found bewildering. But anyway, the point is our experiment, because of how it went all out, it actually may have backfired a little. We went for 90 days and we threw our ads at you no matter where you went, as many as possible, as often as possible. 2 or 3 of the people, like Peldi, basically explained, we're already using your services. Why are you bombarding us with this creepy idea? Stop following us. Proving that remarketing, it is relatively clumsy. It is relatively basic. Now we're on stage 2 of our experiment. What we're doing now is I think we only show 3 or 4 ads a day total. to anyone who comes to our site, hopefully making that process a little bit less creepy and a little bit less obvious. But consider the power of this system. I find my way to your website. For whatever reason, I don't buy, I don't download, I don't fill out your form, I don't convert for whatever reason. I then start seeing your ads, but they're not generic ads because I know who you are. I know what your product is, I know what your service is. They're gentle reminders, and if you do it right, if you really get it right, it could be phenomenally effective. The old style approach, if you like, was we've all done this. You put some sort of bait on your website. A cool tool, a good PDF, a white paper, a really good blog post, a video that's interesting, whatever. And the idea is you hope that some of the people who come to your website, some of them will actually explore your website and maybe say, hey, this is interesting, maybe I'll sign up for this service. With remarketing, you don't need that second step. Just get people into your website and let the remarketing system take it from there. It's a little bit clunky because it's a fairly new system. It's only just over a year old, but it works really, really, really well for now. And if you're not using remarketing, I strongly, strongly urge that you look into it. But I would suggest not going all out 100% bombardment because creepy isn't good for sales. Tip number 7. This one's a little bit more technical, for which I apologize, but I hope it's useful enough that it's worthwhile. It's pretty basic, but it's a deceptively simple question is what criteria determines an ad's success? Generally, people use one of two criteria. The first is click-through rate. You've got an ad group with 3 ads, and ad number 1, in this case, has the highest click-through rate. There you go. There's the best performing ad. The other standard one is conversion rate, and people say here that ad number 3 is the best performer with 7%. The question is, how do you decide between these two criteria when they give you 2 different sets of results? Click-through rate is really, obviously, quite good. It's a good thing to have. It's not just that the ad works, but has a knock-on effect on your other ads, and your costs can come down, your average position can go up, and so on. And conversions, obviously self-explanatory. That's why we're doing AdWords. My approach is very simply ignore the percentages and just multiply the 2 figures with each other. I call it the click-through conversion rate, which really rolls off the tongue, the CTCR. So you multiply the 2 figures, CTR by conversion rate, 5 times 1, 3 times 3, and so on. And in this case, you see that's actually ad number 2 that's the all-round top performer. Now, it's a basic approach. And I understand there are issues and analytical issues in there that you've got to factor in. But remember earlier where I talked about that process of identifying the strengths, merging the weaknesses? It's a really, really effective tool for doing that. And the only thing I can think of speaking against it is it really needs a better name, and I'm genuinely open to ideas. Tip number 8, bidding wars are for dummies. Anyone here in the past worked with GoTo, Overture? Yes, small number. These were the good old days. GoTo became Overture, which became Yahoo, which became Yahoo Microsoft, which will become irrelevant in a few years. But the system was quite simple. It's a really nice, simple system. You bid on the keywords that you want, and ads are displayed in the size of your bid. So the person who gets the best bid gets first place. Second highest bid, second place. So what happens? You log into your account, you see you're in third place. You raise your bids because you want to be in first place. You spend more, but okay, it's worth it. Your competing ads in positions 2, 3, and below then see that, and then they raise their bids, and so begins this never-ending cycle of raising bids. How smart were the GoTo people? AdWords is considerably more complicated, but in a way a lot smarter. The principles are vaguely similar in that many people think that the average position is actually more or less the be-all and end-all. That's what you need. You want to get your ads as high as possible. Now, if you do that, I don't recommend it, but if you do want average position, you've got 2 ways to get a better position. One way is invest 11,000 hours at the expense of your physical appearance and hair, or pay. Guess which is more common? Well, I mean, look at me and then look around the room, and you can see which one most people go for. Most people go for the relatively easier option of simply spending more. And you don't need to. It's not the end of the world at all if your competition are above you. They may be above you simply because they're actually spending 4 or 5 times more than you are. And if you're going to allow them to set your agenda, you are in effect condemning your account to making a loss, which is a really bad idea. Now, over the past year and a half or so, I have been studying a fairly relatively obscure martial art called Filipino Kyushu. One of the things I really like about it, well, it's good for relaxation, it stretches my mind and other parts of my body as well. One of the things that really appeals to me is one of the core principles is that it uses technique over strength, which I really like because I'm not very strong. And I'd rather study technique than actually have to go to a gym and really work hard at that for months on end. What really fascinates me is that the greater the strength and the force used by an opponent, the more effective the technique. In other words, the stronger and tougher you are if you actually try to attack me. I say try to attack me like I'm dangerous. The stronger and more into it you are and you try to attack me, the more I'm going to be able to hurt you, which is absolutely fantastic. Now you can probably see where this is going, where this principle applies. It applies really, really well to AdWords. Most of your competition are using or favoring strength over technique. They're favoring budget over learning how to work the system. But Google have to factor in both. They've got to factor in relevance, technique, and strength in terms of how much you're prepared to pay for it. And my experience has been over and over again, repeatedly, it's one of the few things that never changes in AdWords. A small improvement in technique can have the most enormous knock-on impact on performance and can be vastly more productive than simply raising your bid. Okay, we're on the penultimate quality score. People familiar with quality score? What it is? Few people. It's complicated. Google basically say it's an estimate of how relevant your ads, keywords, and landing pages are to Google. It's kind of like PageRank. It's very similar in a sense to PageRank for SEO. It is, in a sense, the concept applies to AdWords, in that both these concepts are actually quite relevant, but they are vastly overestimated as to the importance. So it makes sense and it's important, but people are it's like become this almost quasi-religious cult that people obsess over their quality score. And if you follow various forums, that sort of thing, for particularly people dealing with AdWords, you'll see people losing their marbles, absolutely going crazy when their quality score plummets, or they celebrate frantically, fervently when they actually get a better quality score. It's hype, ignore it. The accounts I handle, I turn off the quality score column completely, because my belief is it's nothing more than Google's very unsubtle attempt to get you to spend more on your bids. And again, based on experience, it really works. It gets people to spend more. Remember earlier we looked at that chart, the advertisers, the users in Google. At the heart of quality score is one word, and that's relevance. That really is what quality score is about, and really that's what good AdWords is actually about. If you as an advertiser only use relevant keywords, relevant ads, relevant landing pages, you're going to see really, really good results from your AdWords account. And look at the second group, users. If users only see ads and landing pages that are relevant to their searches, they're going to be happy. They don't need to click through 8 or 9 different ads. They need to click 1 or 2. They click on your ad and they found what they're looking for. And here is the secret at the heart of AdWords. Where you have advertisers happy and users are happy, Google are happy, because that's how they make their money. So what you're talking about is you need everything, goes against, again, back to this process of everything being really, really tight, really tightly focused. So again, that process, someone has a need, they go to Google, you make sure you are targeting them with the precise keyword that directly relates to what they're looking for. You make sure that the ad they see when they put in their keyword precisely targets the need. And when they click on the ad, the landing page precisely carries on that process. That resonance carries on from the beginning the whole way through. So the bottom line is, it's all about relevance. Now you may sense as a slight contradiction what I'm saying here. You might be aware that I'm saying relevance fine, but your competition are spending a bit more and Google has sometimes put them above. Well, you're right, but the point is, Google will not place ads only according to how much you're prepared to click on your bid per keyword. The reason being that they are doing this same thing. They need relevance. Remember that 96% figure that we looked at? They're only going to maintain 96% if people like you and I, when we search on ads and click on ads, find what we're looking for. So yes, they factor in bids, but the relevance is every bit as important. So final point, empathy. Empathy works really, really well in sales and marketing. Now, in the UK, I think it's a little bit worse. The financial situation in the UK is probably that little bit worse than the States, or at least we like to complain about it a whole lot more. Something that I'm noticing, and it's probably the same here, there's this astonishing number of ads on TV about what they call debt consolidation services. Now, whether these are actually useful, valuable services or parasites is debatable, and ultimately it's not really relevant to what I'm saying here, but the ads all start in the same way. They all show pictures of people looking stressed, unhappy, they're holding their heads, they've got piles of papers in front of them, they're miserable. They're trying to create this resonance between the person sitting there on the couch in those circumstances, in that situation. They want that moment that they can identify with them. When they do, their victim, for want of a better word, becomes momentarily captive. Then you have stage 2 of the ad. Stage 2 of the ad's really, really fast. It's probably the same here. What happens is they race through horrible terms and conditions, obscene interest rates, and the whole, yes, we exploit the needy, but that's the nature of our business. And then stage 3, look what happens, complete transformation. Everyone's happy, different tone, brighter images, lots of hands held up in the air because people are delighted. And it's great. Life is good. In hindsight, I wouldn't say they're morally debatable. They're obviously utterly heartless bastards. But the point from this is empathy works. It really, really works in advertising, but is so incredibly underused in AdWords. Take a step back from the intricacies, the system, the keywords, the matching, all this sort of thing. Take a step back. A lot of people, when they go to Google looking for something, are actually looking for some sort of solution. So the common approach is, well, we have ads that show that solution. That's really simple. It works. We all do that. We search for something, we see ads that use that exact phrase, that exact keyword, and it's bold. Woohoo. The better ads actually tap into why someone is actually looking for this, not the actual search term themselves. So I did a search for work at home. And there's a screenshot of some of the ads that I saw in the order that I saw them. The better ads capture the wants. They capture the needs that are underneath, that are sort of pushing those keywords out. So when someone searches for work at home, it's not that it's this lifelong aspiration to work at home. Maybe some of them, but most of them, it's not. It's a means to an end. Most of them are looking for more money, greater flexibility, a better hourly wage than the one that they're getting right now. I would really, dearly love to be able to share examples of this approach of using empathy in AdWords by showing you some of our clients' ads and the results that we achieve with this. But for reasons confidentiality, I can't do so. But I went all over Google. I searched extensively in Google. And I could not believe how difficult it was to find ads that use this technique. It's incredibly hard to find them, which makes it an incredibly effective and very, very powerful technique. So if you can show the people that you understand their needs, you show them that you understand what they're searching for, because it's not about the keyword, it's why they're actually searching for the keyword, then the effect that this can have on your performance and your ROI can be absolutely phenomenal. Empathy really, really works. That's 10 ideas to have just gone through. And I know it's early in the morning and it's day 2 and we're all a bit tired. Because of this, my own advice would be to prioritize it. If you're only going to take away 3 ideas from the talks, 3 out of the 10. The first is this whole idea, segment and mold. It's so easy and it's so powerful. Group your keywords, really tightly clustered, group small keywords. Ads that directly address the keyword and landing pages that directly carry on. So you've got this really smooth, seamless change. Try it if you're not doing it. The effect it can have can be phenomenal. CTCR, I know the name's horrible, but again, this process of identifying what works, identifying the strengths, murdering, killing the weaknesses, and seeking out new opportunities, it's a really good technique. Without getting technical, if you use AdWords Editor, it's really easy. You can copy and paste everything from AdWords Editor straight into Excel. which makes it really easy to do those calculations. And the third idea is ride the remarketing wave. How many people are actually using remarketing? Wow, wow. Really? Retargeting, yeah, retargeting, remarketing. But you've got to give that a go. If anything, maybe I put this in the wrong order. If anything, number 3 should have been the first. You need to invest a little bit of time. There's a very, very slight learning curve. But if you get it right and you go by being gentle, the results are phenomenal. Or awesome, as you like to say in the States. I'm learning. So I don't know how we're doing for time. Hope we've got some time for questions. Just before I do, maybe I'm institutionalized. 11,000 hours and made me go a little bit weirder than I was 11 years ago, but I love this stuff. I love AdWords. I told you why I love it, so I'm not going to go into that again. Please do feel free to talk to me at any point during the conference and beyond. Contact me through email. I love this stuff. I really do. This isn't a plug, but we're also offering this thing. Anyone, if you're interested in me having a look through your AdWords account, this URL that's in red, softwarepromotions.com/microconf. You sign up there, we don't ask for much. You sign up there, what we'll do, I'll then contact you, I'll have a look at your AdWords account, and we'll arrange 30, 40 minutes, go-to meeting, whatever works for you. And I'll go through your account with you, showing you what's working, what isn't, where you're wasting money, what could be improved. And I absolutely, hand on heart, promise you, hand on mic apparently, I promise you no sales pitch. But for now, thank you for getting up. I hope it's worthwhile, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.
Besides retargeting, how do you, what is the criteria for whether you turn on the display network ads? It seems like a lot of your talk was about search. Mm-hmm. How do you decide whether you want to use the display network or not?
Display network's a really weird one. It's gone in cycles. The number one tip about display network is don't listen to what anyone tells you about the display network. Apart from me, obviously. It goes in weird cycles. For a while, everyone in the various AdWords community, if there is such a thing, stands up shrieking with joy about how great the display network is, and it's awesome, we see these great results, low cost, fantastic. And then it flips and everyone starts saying, oh, it's terrible, you've got no control, you waste money, it's irrelevant. The bottom line is that there isn't a standard answer. The only thing you can do is try it. We tend to see, I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's either utterly useless or it's really effective. And it's very rare it's in between, actually. It's really rare that you'll try it and be sort of neutral or mediocre, but you do have to try it. The nice thing about it is, contrary to most of the Google system, it's actually getting a little bit more transparent with time, which is really strange. Because Google usually, I don't know if anyone noticed, but today it was announced, at least on my time zone, whichever one I'm in, that Google have actually made quite a fundamental change into the AdWords system today. Of course, they always do, just before I speak. And the change is, you know that whole setting for how you rotate ads? They're taking control away, and what they're going to do is say, hey, when you put a new ad, once it's approved, we will rotate it for 30 days, and then that's it. After 30 days, it's going to be set to display by clicks by default, which is a really typical Google thing. That they just slowly take away control from you. But the display networks is really odd because you're actually getting more transparency and a little bit more control. Are you using display network?
I've always turned it off because I always feel like you want to target the people that are searching directly.
Right. I'd love to give you a really clever answer that would impress you as to why it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but the truth is, I mean, maybe I need another 11,000 hours, but I'm really not sure. But when it works, it can be incredible. So yeah, give it a go.
Other questions?
Well, I was just wondering with that new change you just mentioned, so does that mean you'll only be able to split test for 30 days now?
This is for actually delivery of ads, but you won't be able to rotate. I was talking, maybe it was you I was talking to about this last night. In the past, this is a really good example of what Google are about, actually, without making me sound like a conspiracy weirdo. In the past, I don't know if people remember, but before the last round of changes to how ads were displayed, there were 2 options. one of which was to display ads more evenly, and the other one was to display ads by performance. What people miss is very much lies at the heart of the AdWords system. Google are saying, if you choose the first option, we will display your ads more evenly. Now, I find that amazing, because AdWords built on maths, right? It's all figures. Google aren't saying evenly. Google apparently can't figure out that if your ads are going to be shown 1,000 times a day, you've got 4 ads. They don't know how to divide that equally, which is a little bit odd. So what they say is more evenly. So it's a classic more is actually less. If they want to do evenly, that's pretty easy. But what they've done here is they've taken control away again. I'd say the last 3 months, 2-3 months, there have been more horrific and dramatic changes to AdWords than any time before. People familiar what's happening with keywords, that whole change? Anyone not familiar? Oh, brilliant. Oh, you'll love this. We won't get into specifics, but the broad match, phrase match, exact match. Well, Google are changing that, and what they're changing it to, in a sense, is they're saying broad match will continue to be broad match, potentially useful, but you've got to be careful. Phrase match, exact match, we're going to treat kind of like broad match. So you can still choose it as phrase match and exact match, but it will actually be broad match. So even though you say exact no longer means exact, and phrase actually could mean kind of similar, related in a somehow tenuous connection to, that's the new change. But for now, this is something that you can opt out of. For now, you'll be able to opt out of this change. I can't actually remember when it's going live, but quite soon. I guarantee by the time MicroConf 2013 happens, that won't be optional. I guarantee that's going to be the way the system works. This is what Google do. So something maybe I should have paid more attention to in the presentation as a whole is I love Google, I really do, and we do very well out of Google, and our clients do very, very well out of Google. And they're not evil, they're not bad, but the system is horrible, horrible. And the greater you can develop this sense of treat your AdWords account like you're British. Be a bit snooty, a bit standoffish, very suspicious. Smile at Google, but behind the smile you're thinking, oh, I don't trust these people. That's a healthy way to have a relationship with Google. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have time for one more.
As small small companies, we're really sensitive to the money we do spend on AdWords, and I see that I run campaigns that end up being, 50% of them the clicks will pretty much be click fraud. Do you have any suggestions or tactics to try and limit that, even on your smaller campaigns?
Is this what you're identifying as click fraud or Google?
I am.
Right.
I go in and I see what keywords brought them through the ad, and there's no way that person was searching for.
Well, using a lot of broad match.
Yes.
Okay. Basically, the more you can tighten it up. I don't mean this in any way disrespectfully. I really don't. But most times when people think there's click fraud, it's more like Google fraud. It's that their system is doing what it's supposed to, which is, like I said, smile at you while taking the money out of your pockets. Click fraud is an issue for you. It's an issue for me and our clients. But it's a huge issue to Google, because if 50-60% of the people in this room start realizing that you're actually losing a lot of money through fraud and Google don't respond to it, you will start scaling back your budgets. Remember that whole 96% of the revenue comes from AdWords? So it's a massive, massive issue to Google. If you're convinced that it's genuinely fraud, and it's not just the system doing what it's supposed to, contact Google and be persistent. But the trick is, don't mention the word click fraud, because you say that and they sort of clam up and they get very defensive and they give you links to various autoresponders. But what we've found is we've seen a few cases of absolute blatant click fraud, where a 5-year-old child could, at a push, recognize something weird was going on. And what they've done each time, it's been that blatant, and we've given them all the evidence. They won't say, yeah, you know what, you're right, the system's failed, the hardware system doesn't work very well, and you have actually been a victim of fraud. But what they'll do is they'll say, we've looked at everything, everything's fine, but as a gesture of goodwill, we will refund that $5,400 that you claim might have been something suspicious, but wasn't. And we've seen that time and time again, I'd say maybe 5 or 6 times over the years. So if it's a really dig, there's this credibility thing. If you go to Google screaming click fraud and then they prove it's not, at that point they will never take you seriously again. But if you're sure that it is genuine fraud, get all your data first. Don't mention the word click fraud. Give them your spreadsheets, your graphs, give them your proof, and then sit back and wait. And tweeting about it really helps as well. And then get a few other people to retweet it. That gets their attention. Okay,
We have a Patio 11 exception, so we have one last question.
Every speaker dreads a question from you. It's not going to be an easy one, this, is it? Like, what time is it in the UK? I can't figure that out right now.
So a couple of times over the years, I've had customer support issues with Google AdWords, and like Peldy mentioned the other day, I found out the most effective way was to complain about it on the Hacker News front page, but not everybody has that option. So for the folks here who might not, if, oh my God, the campaign shuts off, the business is dying because of something with AdWords, what's the effective way to get resolution on that?
To be honest, it's more, the answer is a kind of political one. It's a bit slimy. It's not what you should do, it's more what you shouldn't do. Definitely don't bother emailing one of the, for want of better phrases, idiots who handle the technical support, the AdWords support, because they genuinely have no idea, and they will never acknowledge that there's an issue, no matter how blatant. What I've found the best way generally is just call them. I don't know how easy it is to find the number in the States, but it's sort of hidden away in the UK, but we can get it. And anyone needs the number, I'm more than happy to give you Sergey's phone number that you can raise these sorts of issues. But calling definitely seems to be the way. But it's a kind of, it's common sense. But what I always do on the phone, I'd say I call them twice, 3 times a month for various issues. And I always say to them what I'm going to do, get their email address and the case number they've assigned. And then I always say, I'm going to send a summary of everything that we discussed as soon as we're done here, just so we're clear and everything. And you do almost hear it's a barely audible, oh shit moment. But that's actually quite good because then they take you seriously. Because I think like a lot of big companies, understandably, in fairness to Google, most of their support queries will be absurd. They will be things that people should figure out for themselves. And so obviously they don't employ AdWords experts to pick up the phone. But if you sort of go through these hoops, make them realize that they're going to be accountable, make them realize that you are crazy obsessive and you will follow. I tried it once, it didn't work, but I did say, and I'll follow this up with you in about an hour and a half and we'll see what progress has been made, which I think scared them a little bit, but didn't help me in any way. But yeah, just phone, definitely don't bother wasting time with email. Phone, need sort of balance between scaring them a little bit, but not make them dismiss you as a complete and utter fruitcake. Although sometimes that can be good as well. But yeah, phone's the way to go.
Dave's going to be available during breaks, and you're staying tonight as well. He'll be around. Excellent. So if you have further questions, approach him in person. Thanks again, Dave.
Thank you.